Hello, hello, and welcome back. Yet another college football video. Listen to me. I absolutely need to start pumping more videos out if I even want to come close to reaching my goals for the start of the college football season and the NFL season. However, with that being said, today we have the second team spotlight video for my college football series. We're talking about Penn State. Now, listen, this video is probably going to be about 50% me ranting about how much I hate Penn State and then another 50% about how, if I'm being unbiased here, if we're strictly talking about the roster, if we're not taking any historical context, previous season, nothing like that, just looking at Penn State this year, they have an argument to be the number one team in the entire country. But you will quickly come to see why I will never put Penn State number one in anything. So let's get right into the video. This should be a fairly entertaining one. So I do have Penn State as my number three team overall in the country right now, behind Texas and behind another team, which we will get to later on in my top 30 series. But as we all know, Penn State plays in the Big Ten. In 2023, they went 10-3, missing the college football playoff because they lost to Michigan and Ohio State, and they did end up losing to Ole Miss in a New Year's Six bowl game. And then this previous season, they had, I would this be the best season under the James Franklin tenure? I guess technically, but here's the thing. The thing that people fail to mention about Penn State, just because they made the playoffs and they won a couple playoff games, they still went 0-3 in the three biggest games they played this year. They lost to Ohio State, they lost the Big Ten championship, and they lost the college football national semifinals. So even though they won 13 games, they really have nothing to show for. Like it is is it the worst 13 win season in college football history? I mean, I'm not some historian or anything like that, but there's a strong case to be made here that Penn State with just a fraudulent 13 win season. And then 2025, who knows? We're going to get into what my overall prediction for Penn State will be coming up here. Let's take a look at the stats here and what I think we can take away from what Penn State turned into from 2023 to 2020. I forgot to add that in here. The left-hand side is 2023. The right-hand side is 2024. So offensively, you could make an argument that they took a step forward. Well, in terms of total yards, things like that, passing yards, rushing yards, they all went in the right direction. Points per game dropped. I think that's more so because of the defense than anything else. But the offensive line was very consistent across both years. Turnovers, though, here's the thing, though. If we take a quick step back here, then we can see that they played three more games than they did the previous season. So obviously, you would expect turnovers to go up, but damn near doubling. They went from extremely efficient at not turning the ball over to just being pretty good at it. So that would be the main drawback from the offense. But besides that, I think you can make an argument they got slightly better offensively from 2023 to 2024. However, it did not matter because they did not show up in the big games yet again. Defensively, they were arguably the best defense in the country. In 2023, they were absolutely elite. 2024, not really the case. They did lose some very, very good players to the NFL. Also lost, I believe it was Manny Diaz was the DC in 2023. He left to be the head coach of Duke, so maybe that played an impact as well. Overall, defense did take a major step back, pretty much 50 yards per game. They still were, I mean, this is the thing. They took a big step back, and they were still arguably top 10 in the entire country, right? So that's the caliber we're talking about here with the Penn State defense. So, but, I mean, 50 more yards allowed per game, 3 more points per game allowed. Sacks was the real thing that killed them, I think. They went from being the best pass rushing team in the country to just really good at it. And then takeaways remained about the same. You would expect maybe a bigger change in terms of, playing 3 more games, but they were still an elite defense and the strength of this team overall. Taking a look here at the roster going into next year, who they lose, who they retain, things like that. I guess let's start with Drew Aller here. Listen, man, I cannot see a world where some people think this guy is going to be a first round pick. Now listen, with Tyler Shuck being the number 40 overall pick, I guess you can throw everything out the window in terms of what you think about quarterback evaluation in regards to the NFL and things like that. Shedeur Sanders going in the 5th round, Tyler Shuck top 40. Who knows anymore? Who gives a fuck? But I will never, for the life of me, envision a world where Drew Aller can be a first round pick because every single time I see this guy play a big game, because that's the thing, right? You want to judge a quarterback against the best competition. You want to see how he handles adversity. You want to see how he plays against a good defense because guess what? Every NFL game a college quarterback is going to play, the defense will be better than any defense he's ever faced in college. It's just a fact. So it's it's mind-boggling to me that people can look at all the Drew Aller big game flops and still, come up with the conclusion that he's some sort of a good quarterback. I don't see it. I think he's a really good college quarterback. I think against bad teams that Penn State's supposed to beat, he's even a great college quarterback. And here's the thing. Penn State has absolutely mastered the model. Penn State is probably the easiest team to bet on in the country because they have 100% win percentage against teams that they're better than and a 0% win percentage against the teams they're worse than. If you just made a living the past 3 years betting on Penn State, you'd probably be a millionaire because it's the most sure thing in college football. But, like I said, against those bad teams, Drew Aller looks amazing. And against good teams, he is nowhere to be found. He hurts this team way more than he helps them. Now, one of the more shocking aspects about this team, and one of the aspects that people point towards about why they believe Penn State could be the number one team in the country, is that you have a lot of players who could have gone to the NFL last year if they so chose, choosing to return to Penn State this year. Notably, the top two players in this realm would be their star running backs. They do have two-star running backs, and they both return. They're both 1,000-yard guys, and if they were on their own team, both these guys could possibly be All-Americans in their own right. They are both absolute stars, and the strength of this team, undoubtedly, they have a dominant run duo in between Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. That should be and even with that, is it fair to say that Penn State has been underutilizing them? I understand it's pretty easy to shut down a college run game. You could just stuff the box right, but it's like I just feel like Penn State should be a little bit more committed, if that's even possible, into these two guys. Because let's be brutally honest. If Penn State doesn't dominate you in the run game with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, they don't have a fucking chance. Like they're not beating anybody if these two guys aren't contributing to the offense in major ways. So I even feel like they should lean more into them because Drew Aller is not lifting you to some other plane here. They do lose Tyler Warren, which probably was the best player on their entire team, maybe alongside Abdul Carter. So they lose the top two players on their entire team. That's going to be tough to rebound from. Tyler Warren offensively, not only was he the only option they had in terms of the pass game, he also did a lot for you just in terms of versatility. You can play him in so many different ways, and he can do so many things for you. Losing him, certainly, you're just not going to – it's like Georgia losing Brock Bowers. You just are not going to be able rather, to recover from that. I guess Harrison Wallace was your best receiver last year, and he did have some moments. The West Virginia game comes to mind. Against bad teams, he did have some pretty good games, but just like the rest of the offense, he was nowhere to be found when they needed him most. And Julian Fleming, damn, what a bust that guy was. He did nothing for them last season. And so they pretty much replaced the entirety of this receiving room. The one guy I'm really looking towards here is Trevor Pena. He comes in from Syracuse. He's used to being in a very pass-heavy offense, and he dominated last year at Syracuse. I believe Kyron Hudson, where did he come from? Was it UCF? I don't know where he came from, but I believe he's the other guy that I'm really looking towards here. Is it Devontae Ross? One of these two guys, these transfers, is not really, or he didn't have a lot of success last year. The other one had a bit of success, not as much as Trevor Pena. So you would assume, right, that strictly talking about the wide receiver room would be improved. But quite frankly, it means nothing to me. I'm going to expect less out of it because they lose Tyler Warren, and I already know they're not going to show up against good teams. So it's like, I don't care. Penn State could have Jamison Williams, Jeremiah Smith, and who's another top receiver in the country somewhere? Eric Singleton. That could be their wide receiver room. And it wouldn't matter to me because I don't even expect Drew Aller to be able to get them the ball against good defenses. So it's like, that's how little confidence I have in Penn State and in their pass game overall. Now, the offensive line, let's count together how many stars they returned. Their left tackle, their left guard, their center, and their right tackle. So they return 4 starters. That's massive to me. That helps to let me know that their run game should be just as good, if not better. I mean, let's take a look at the numbers here. How many yards do you think Penn State should be rushing for a game? 200 plus a game. It's really good. It's better than it was in 2023. I would suggest it takes a step even farther. I would like to see 220 a game, 225. I feel like with this talent and this offensive line, they have no excuses to not be one of the best run games in the country. That's just my opinion. Looking defensively here, I mean, you lose Abdul Carter, Kobe King, Kevin Winston, even though he didn't play a whole lot last season, Jalen Reed. You lose a good amount of players here defensively if you're Penn State. But does it get to a point here where you're just kind of confident that Penn State is going to have one of the best defenses year in and year out? Well, for the third consecutive year, you're going to have a new defensive coordinator because you bring in the guy from Ohio State. Surprisingly, he left Ohio State to be the new DC at Penn State. Seems like a pretty lateral move to me, but that's what they did. They got a couple guys back, getting Denise Sutton, Zane Durant. Let's just count them: Tony Rojas, Zeke Wheatley, AJ Harris, Zion Tracy. They get a lot of guys back, right? But is it a trickle-down effect? Is it like 2023 was the peak, 2024 was still really, really good, and 2025 could be the weakest Penn State defense? Here's the thing. If Penn State has any hope on planet Earth, they have to be a top 10 defense. That's the only way, because they're never going to be a good offense when, those big games come around. So, with the least amount of talent they've had in the last 3 years, they still somehow have to figure out a way to be a top 10 defense, in my opinion. That is a fact. Taking a look here. This is the overwhelming reason here, the cause for all my doubt and speculation. Penn State, in my opinion, is 0 for 8 in their 8 biggest games the last 3 years. The reason I only went to 2022 is because in 2020 and 2021, they were garbage. There was no point in even including those 2 years because they didn't just lose big games. They lost to damn near everybody. So I'm only looking here at the last 3 years in which Penn State has been a powerhouse, and they've won at least 10 games every year. So even in these years where they've won at least 10 games, they are 0 for 8. 0 for 8 in these big games. And it's not just a certain aspect here. It's not like you can say, oh, well, they really struggled on the road. A lot of these games are neutral site. Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Oregon. It's not just you can say, oh, they only struggled, or they won a bunch of games at home. They lost to Michigan on the home, or they lost to Michigan at home, Ohio State at home. Like, there's no real. You could say their offense didn't show up. In the wide majority of these games, the offense didn't show up. But look at 2022 against Ohio State, 31 points they put on the board. Look at 2024 against Oregon. They scored 37 on Oregon, and their defense doesn't show up. Their defense didn't show up at all in 2022. They didn't show up. They didn't stop Ole Miss at all in the bowl game. It's like, no matter what you want to put together, Penn State cannot. They are physically allergic to putting together a complete game against a top-level opponent. It is a tried and true fact that Penn State chokes every single time. This decade, the entirety of this decade, Penn State has not had a good season in which they beat a high-level opponent. It is just sad, really. And, it is like beating a dead horse, because it's like you can't even really mock Penn State for losing every big game, because it's getting to the point now where it's like you view them as almost incapable. Because if someone never does something, you can't really shit on them because they didn't do it. Like, someone has to show a certain level of competency in order for you then to mock them for not doing something. It's like if someone has never got their driver license, like if they've never driven, let me put it like this, if they've never driven a car before, you can't get mad at them for not having a license. So if Penn State hasn't won a big game this decade, you can't get mad at them for continuing to lose big games. Does that make sense to you? Because that's how I'm thinking about it. It's getting old, crapping on Penn State at this point. So let's just take a look at every game they've played the last 2 years. And what I really want to harp on is this 2024 season, because calling it the worst 13-win season ever, I really feel like it has some merit to it, because I'm going to point out 3 wins they had, which they just grind my gears. The Bowling Green win, USC, and Minnesota. Watching these games truly felt like Penn State was going to lose all 3 of these games. By the skins of their teeth, they managed to beat the mighty Bowling Green, USC, and Minnesota. All three garbage teams last year. No offense. So it's really the combination of struggling against terrible teams, getting demolished by okay, let me not say demolished. Penn State has a knack of just losing close enough to where you can't say they got blown out, right? So it's like 7 point loss to Ohio State, 8 point loss to Oregon, very close game against Notre Dame. You can't say they got dominated or blown out, but they lose every time. So it's like the combination of that, struggling against some terrible teams, and then oh my, don't even get me started on the playoffs. The amount of people, no, Penn State deserves zero credit for beating SMU and Boise State. Clemson beat SMU the week before. They proved that they were not that dangerous of a team. And Penn State, their offense, do not be mistaken. Penn State's defense put together an all-time classic performance against SMU. Penn State's offense really struggled this game, especially in the first half. So they get zero credit for that win. And it was in Penn State, by the way. And then the Boise State game, it's a G5 team that you could literally put 9 people in the box and pretty much shut down their offense. And that game, honestly, was even a little bit too close for comfort here. Keep in mind, Penn State shut down Ashton Jeanty and only beat Boise by 17. That is not impressive at all, in my opinion. So, yeah. Honestly, Penn State gets zero praise, zero credit. They were embarrassing last year, in my personal opinion. Now, let's take a look at what they face next season. Surprise. Notice, Bowling Green was too difficult an opponent for Penn State in their first little warm-up period here. And also, playing West Virginia, playing a Power 5 road opponent, is also off the table now. So in their first 3 games, they played Nevada, FIU, and Villanova, all at home, by the way. I mean, how easy of a opening stretch do you need, Penn State? Truly, this is really embarrassing. But they're obviously going to go 3-0. And listen, they are going to look incredible these first 3 games. If they don't, you will absolutely hear me talk about it. But they're going to look absolutely incredible these 3 games. And because teams like Texas and Ohio State play each other already, Clemson is going to have a big game against LSU. They could be sitting really pretty after these 3 weeks. And it's very possible. Well, the winner of Texas Ohio State is clearly going to be the number 1 team in the country. But I would almost expect Penn State to be number 2 unless, maybe Clemson dominates LSU or something like that. But people are going to be praising Penn State way too much based off these first 3 games. Number 4 against Oregon, obviously, is going to have – it's the most important game they play for the first 2 months of the season, of course. It's going to have everybody's attention. And if they win that game, strong argument probably that they could be the number 1 team in the country. I am really not that high on Oregon, especially compared to last year. I was really high on Oregon, and they met my expectations. They beat Ohio State and Penn State before, running into the playoff Ohio State, which was an absolute buzzsaw here. I expect Oregon to take a massive step back. If this was last year, obviously I would have picked them to beat Penn State, but I do think Penn State's a better roster. And honestly, the deciding thing here for me is them playing in Penn State. If this was in Oregon, in Eugene, Oregon, I'm probably picking the Ducks here, but I just think Penn State, if they lose this, oh, brother. Oh, brother, if they lose this game. But, yeah, obviously it's going to be a really big matchup here, and we'll see what happens. I believe it's also a whiteout game, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, too many things working in Penn State's factor. I absolutely expect them to win this game. Then UCLA, Northwestern, Iowa. These are just the absolute – people don't talk about enough. In the Big Ten, there is just so much slop. Like, say what you want about the SEC, like Mississippi State, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. Like, there are some, Arkansas. There's some pretty bad teams at the bottom of the SEC. But the mid-tier, South Carolina, Tennessee, LSU, like Florida, the mid-tier is pretty stacked in the SEC. Oklahoma. The Big Ten has no mid-tier. It's Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, and then it's just slop. There's just nothing of value in the Big Ten outside the Big Four. So, yeah, UCLA, Northwestern, Iowa. I don't care that 2 of those games are road games. You have to win all 3 of these games if you're Penn State. But they only beat UCLA by 16 points last year. So, who knows? Maybe they'll knowing Penn State, they probably will have a 3-point narrow squeak of a win against one of these teams. Now, at this point, Penn State will most likely be 7-0 heading into Ohio State, and this will probably be a top three, maybe a top five matchup in the country, depending on how Ohio State's ranked. But massive implications. The winner of this game will have a guaranteed ticket to the Big Ten championship. And when was the last time Penn State beat Ohio State? Has it been more than 7 or 8 years? I don't even know. I think they beat them once under James Franklin, but I mean, it's just something. It gets to a point you cannot pick Penn State to beat Ohio State. You just can't do it. Their offense cannot move the ball against Ohio State, especially these last 2 years. It's been embarrassing. Drew Aller has proven time and time again when he plays a good defense. And listen, he did well against Oregon last. Well, by Drew Aller standards, he did well against Oregon last year. But it's just a proven thing now. Like, why would you bet against someone that has been so proven time and time again? I will never pick Drew Aller or Penn State to beat Ohio State, no matter how weak Ohio State is. I think Penn State probably has a better roster than Ohio State right now, but I will never pick them to beat Ohio State. So that leaves them at 7-1. And listen, the rest of their schedule, Indiana and Nebraska, if they were played on the road, then maybe I take a closer look at them. But both of them being played in Penn State, I can't really pick against the Lions in that scenario. And then Michigan State and Rutgers on the road pose no threat at all. So Penn State should, depending on the Oregon game, be able to cruise to an 11-1 regular season record and at worst a 10-2 record. Now, either way, I think would probably get them in the playoffs. Maybe if they go 10-2 and they clearly lose to Oregon and Ohio State, then I think there should be an argument. But no matter the scenario, I think Penn State's making the playoffs. And under this given scenario, I do expect them to make the Big Ten championship game playing against Ohio State. Now, how does that game go? I think Ohio State beats them again. I don't see a word. I have to see it. I have to see it to believe it. If you told me 5 times that Penn State would play Ohio State next season, I would pick Ohio State every time. Until Penn State does it, I will not pick Penn State to beat Ohio State. So I have Penn State going 11-1 in the regular season, making and losing the Big Ten championship to Ohio State. So I have them going 11-2, making the playoffs. And this is so hard to predict because who the fuck knows what kind of a team that they'll play in the first round. But I do expect them to probably get a home playoff game in the first round. And it's very simple. If they play a team that they're better than, they'll beat them. If they play a team that they're worse than, they'll lose. That is very simple. That is the way I'm going to break it down for you. I am probably going to assume, though, that they play a team that they are better than in the first round. So I have Penn State winning one playoff game and then probably losing in the second round now that they have to play teams either at their level or who are better than them. So I have Penn State going 12-3, slightly worse than last year, but I would say even worse, though, than last year because it's a compounding thing now. Every year that this goes on where they can't win, because in this scenario, they would still not beat Ohio State, not win the Big Ten championship, and not make a national championship, right? So it's like, even though, yet again, you win 12 games, you win a playoff game, they accomplish none of their personal goals. So it's like, it only continues to get worse. And at that point, I truly believe the tipping point would be breached. I believe the majority of Penn State fans at that point would want to move on from James Franklin because it really doesn't matter how many games you win. There are certain achievements. Beating your top rival who's a dominant team, winning your conference championship, winning the national championship. If you can't do any of those 3 things, does the record really matter? I don't think so. Let me put it this way. Would Penn State have traded their 13-win season last year to have gone, let's just say by some miracle, they went like 12-4. Like, let's look at last season, right? Let's say Penn State lost to West Virginia, lost to Minnesota, but beat Ohio State and then beat Oregon in the national championship and then beat beat Oregon in the conference championship and then won the national championship. Obviously, you trade wins, meaningless wins. And at this point, opening playoff games, depending on the team, I would say opening games, the first 2 rounds of the playoffs for a team like Penn State, they are meaningless, especially depending on who you beat. Now, if they would have beat like a Georgia or a Notre Dame or like even a Tennessee last year, then we could start talking about, okay, that's the best one they've had in the last 3 years. But they beat SMU and Boise State. So we have arrived at a point now where you can have meaningless playoff games depending on who wins. So Penn State has reached that point. They truly are the most unique team in college football when it comes to expectations because they are the only team in the country who could win 13 games and multiple playoff games and still have a bad season, in my opinion. Nobody else can say that. So let's take a look finally here at the Venn diagram, this beautifully drawn Venn diagram of my strengths, weaknesses, and question marks. Starting with the strengths, obviously, I already mentioned that running back duo, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. If they do end up breaking the mold, changing, rewriting history, it would be because of those two running backs, in my opinion. The returning offensive line to hopefully make this one of the most dominant run games in the country while also protecting Drew Aller consistently. And then, they're small games. They will most likely go undefeated against every single team that they're favored against. I have no doubt about that in my mind. The question marks, pass catchers. Not necessarily or how good are the pass catchers, because overall, I don't think it's as good as last year. I think their wide receivers are better. But quite frankly, how much of an impact will they play in these big matchups? Major question mark there. And then the top 10 defense. That is the threshold for me. If they are a top 10 defense, I'm very confident that they'll win double-digit games and make the playoffs. If they're not a top 10 defense, we could see them possibly even kind of falling off the rails because at that point they're going to have to depend on Drew Aller, and nobody wants to do that. And then the weaknesses, big game Drew Aller. I've said it once, I've said it 10 times, I'll say it even once more. I have zero faith in this guy. He has proven time and time again that he does not know what to do when the lights get bright. And when someone shows you who they are, trust them. I don't see the point in trying to, wishful thinking Drew Aller into being somebody that he's not. And then also big game James Franklin. They're one and the same. James Franklin was losing big games before Drew Aller. He'll lose big games after Drew Aller. Drew Aller is simply a part in the overarching James Franklin fraud storyline. So that is going to be it for this video. I hope I was able to accurately portray why I doubt Penn State so heavily, but also mention why I do think the pressure is higher than it's ever been because they really, truly could be the best roster in the country. So a very interesting conversation whenever you get to talk about Penn State. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.